Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the Corn Belt. I'm Andrew Pritchard, meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. We'll look at the hazards map first here on this Tuesday morning, and again we see a lot of blue across portions of the eastern Corn Belt. Another round of freeze warnings and frost advisories in place across portions of Ohio, southeastern Indiana, and eastern Kentucky. And that is on the heels of another round of cool air that's pushing in across the Great Lakes into the eastern Corn Belt. Temperatures across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio going to be feeling much cooler than they were yesterday, and honestly much cooler than they'll be tomorrow. This is really a cool blip in what's otherwise going to be a relatively pleasant spring week across the Corn Belt. So we take a look at the satellite picture here again on this Tuesday morning. We see our departing storm system that brought the severe weather to the south over the weekend, and we've got this little front, the one that's bringing the cooler temperatures to the Corn Belt right now, moving across out of Ohio through Kentucky and Tennessee, even some isolated thunderstorms kicking off across that region. If I go ahead and take it back though, notice on the backside here, plenty of clear skies. It's going to be a lot of sunshine across the Corn Belt today. With dry conditions, I expect to see, plenty of planters continuing to roll. As we drove across portions of Champaign County over the last couple of days, been seeing a lot of planting activity ongoing. We'll look at the radar then on Tuesday morning. Again, this is an early look. If you're checking in a little bit later in the day, take a more recent look at the radar here. But we see most of the shower activity moving out of the Corn Belt. Some very light precipitation here across portions of North Dakota. We may see some light wintry precipitation sliding across the Great Lakes as we head through the next 48 hours. Now, the pattern over the next 5 to 7 days, it's not one that's really easy to simplify across the Corn Belt here. If I had to kind of try, we'll see a couple of systems here over the next 5 days that's going to be bringing a continued severe weather threat from the southern plains into the Gulf of Mexico. So this would be today's severe weather outlook, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we've got Thursday. So that severe weather threat moving from west to east across the southern plains into the southeastern United States over the next 3 days. And then we have another system that's going to bring that severe weather threat back to the exact same region here Friday and Saturday. As we talk about temperatures over the next 5 days, we're going to see cooler temperatures holding on across the Great Lakes into the eastern Corn Belt. But if you kind of follow your eyes down to the color bar here, we're talking about temperatures 3 to 5 degrees cooler than average, which in late April is not all that awful. When we talk about precipitation, I mentioned it briefly up here, talking about that severe weather threat. Two systems moving west to east across the Gulf Coast. So, of course, our heavier precipitation anomaly is going to be continuing to focus south of the Ozarks to the Ohio River Valley. And again, that has really been the theme over the last couple of weeks. And again, as we look at the jet stream pattern, we're watching a ridge in the west, a trough in the east. Now, that's the opposite of our big, pattern that soaked the Corn Belt and the portions of the southern plains as we go back to last April and May. So we kind of flipped the script over the next 7 to 10 days at least, keeping this ridge in the west, the trough in the east. And again, that's going to keep the heavier precipitation corridor here near the Gulf Coast. That's going to keep a lot of, the upper level divergence across the Corn Belt. That's going to keep bringing in cooler and drier air from the Canadian Prairie. So a drier bias here from the Canadian Prairie into a chunk of the Corn Belt here. And then those cooler temperatures holding on at times across the Great Lakes into the eastern Corn Belt. So that kind of vaguely simplifies it. But now as we dive in, you're going to see some of the uncertainty and some of the nuances over the next 5 to 7 days that make this kind of difficult to really paint a simplified brush. So let's look at the NAM model first. This will take us through the next couple of days, kind of give us a more specific, high-resolution look. Now we're heading through the day today, a really pleasant day across much of the Corn Belt. As you head into southwestern Kansas, maybe some rain showers, a couple thunderstorms beginning to emerge as we head into the afternoon and evening hours. And then as you head well off to the north, where we're not yet talking about planting, we do have the chance for some light snow cutting across portions of northern Minnesota, getting into northern and central portions of Wisconsin as we get into the overnight. This is very light snow, flurry activity, not talking about any significant accumulation with this. We're at midnight now, overnight tonight, heading into early Wednesday morning. The sun's coming up now on Wednesday morning across the Great Lakes, still looking at some of that wintry precipitation. And then as you head down toward the south, we're seeing some of that severe weather now kicking off across portions of Oklahoma, and then maybe far southern Missouri, far southeastern Kansas. We're heading into Wednesday morning now, midday on Wednesday. So now we are at noon on Wednesday. Dry again across much of the northern plains here. We're seeing some of that heavier precipitation activity, some of those stronger thunderstorms continuing to slowly make their way off to the east, and then seeing some of this very light precipitation continuing across the Great Lakes. We'll take this now into Wednesday evening. sunset on Wednesday evening. The severe weather continuing to slowly move west to east across the south. We've got another frontal boundary kind of progressing south across portions of Iowa, getting into northern Illinois, across Lake Michigan into southern Michigan. As we get into the overnight now, Wednesday night into Thursday, this would be midnight on Thursday, and we're starting to see some of that precipitation bumping up into central Illinois now. So again, I'm recording this video in Champaign County. I've been driving around back and forth here across some of the rural areas over the last few days, and I've seen a lot of machinery in the fields, a lot of planting going on, a lot of tilling. So across this area, central Illinois, we got until about Wednesday night before some of those light rain showers try to push into the area. But you notice kind of I-74 traveling from west to east, or maybe Interstate 72 would be a better example here, wants to kind of be the dividing line between some of the heavier precipitation and maybe keeping things drier here across the northern half of Illinois. So there will be kind of a sharp cutoff between areas that do pick up some measurable precipitation Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and some areas that stay mostly dry across central Illinois. So now we're into Thursday afternoon. This is going to take us all the way to noon on Thursday. Precipitation starting to pull away from central Illinois, moving across Indiana and Ohio with the heavier precipitation and the severe weather threat down towards Kentucky and Tennessee, although by Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, that severe weather threat with this first system beginning to wane across Kentucky and Tennessee. Our next storm system, the next upper level low, is now across portions of the northern plains, and that's going to come swinging in here as we get into the weekend. So over the next 2.5 days, all the way to Thursday at noon, total precipitation by precipitation type. Again, total liquid precipitation going to be the heaviest here in this corridor from kind of the Oklahoma and Kansas border across the Ozarks into the mid-south. Kind of a dividing line here between maybe Interstate 70 across Kansas into north-central Missouri, and then Interstate 72 here across portions of Illinois, Interstate 74 going into the Indianapolis area. That is going to be kind of the dividing line between more significant precipitation and then what's going to be a mostly dry corridor beginning from that area and then really extending back into the northern plains. The chance for some very light wintry precipitation here, a chance for some light flurries, maybe mixing at times with some sleet or freezing rain cutting across northern Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin and portions of Michigan. So we'll look at the upper level 500 millibar vorticity plot. This is from the European model. Here's our first upper level low. This is the one that brings the rain and severe weather threat from west to east across the southern plains into the Gulf Coast. As we put this into motion, we'll see our next player come into view across the left side of the screen as we get into, here's Thursday, here's our first wave now making its way across the region, and then here comes the next round of energy out of the northwest as we get into the late part of the weekend to the early weekend. You see it starting to take on that more classic area of low pressure look as we get into Friday and Saturday now across the eastern Corn Belt, across the mid-Mississippi Valley. And that's going to, again, this will be the big wild card as we get into Friday and Saturday. And I'm going to talk about what that means here in just a moment. Quickly, though, looking at the severe weather index that we've got here in Nutrien, we worked on developing this last year, kind of highlights the severity or the volatility of some of our thunderstorm environments across the U.S. using the GFS model. So as we look at that Wednesday severe weather threat, highest here across the Gulf Coast, getting into portions of eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas. We take this from Wednesday night into Thursday, watching that severe weather threat move from west to east. By Thursday now, talking about it across the Gulf Coast, portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, getting into Alabama, and then Georgia as we get into Thursday night and early Friday morning. The front clears the area. The severe weather threat goes away for a brief moment here during the Friday morning hours, but Friday afternoon, Friday evening, we've already returned a volatile environment here across the region. And that continues from west to east across the area on Saturday. So at times, Kentucky and Tennessee watching out for the northern end of some of those severe weather risks. The best chance for severe weather across Kentucky and Tennessee is going to be on Thursday afternoon with that first system, and then as the second wave moves through here Friday afternoon and evening into early in the day on Saturday. So we'll pan back, we'll look at the European model. This will take us a little bit further out into the weekend. We'll begin here on this Tuesday, watching this upper level low that's dragging the cold front through the region here, continuing to move through the region during the day on Tuesday. Again, a quiet Tuesday for much of us across the Corn Belt. It's as we get later into the day on Wednesday, we start to see some of the heavier precipitation emerging here across portions of Kansas, getting into southern Missouri. We have again talked about kind of the sharp cutoff from Interstate 70 across 72 into Interstate 74, from Kansas into Missouri, Central Illinois, and Indiana, where we see some of the heavier precipitation south of that line, north of that line. Probably more people going to be dry than wet, and the folks who are wet will likely end up with maybe a few tenths of an inch in most cases, so not something that's going to totally disrupt things across that region. So this gets out of here. We're into Thursday evening now, getting into Thursday night, Friday morning now. Here comes our next storm system beginning to emerge as we get into Friday, midday Friday afternoon. Starting to see some precipitation across, portions of the northern plains, getting into Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Illinois. And I want to point out, at this point, we're not talking about widespread total coverage of precipitation here. This is just this entire area seeing the chance for some spotty showers. Now, where we've seen some changes, and what makes this forecast a bit tricky with this particular storm system as we get into Friday and Saturday is kind of the northern edge here. How much precipitation we see across portions of Iowa, Wisconsin, and northern Illinois as the main area of low pressure tracks off to the south of this region. So the heavier precipitation, the severe weather threat is south of the red arrow here, kind of tracking from west to east through parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. North of that, maybe talking about some rumbles of thunder, but really talking about some heavier showers. And we've seen some changes with some of the total precipitation across that area. So once again, let's just time this out real quick, because I know I was drawing and talking as I narrated here. But going through Wednesday morning, getting into Wednesday afternoon now, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday night, Friday morning. Now our first storm system has departed. Coming in from the west is the next system Friday morning, getting into Friday afternoon, Friday night, Saturday. This is when the biggest question mark exists across this region. And then as we head into the day on Saturday, I'll be watching that severe weather threat. Really across Kentucky and Tennessee with the second one, it's Friday night into Saturday morning, which is not really typical timing for a real robust severe weather threat, but we'll have to watch that as we get into the later part of the week. Now, what are the changes that I'm talking about here? Well, this is the European forecast run from Sunday night, the one that Eric showed in his video here from Monday morning, right on the left. So this would be Sunday nights. We'll just go ahead and mark it like that. And then Monday night's run, the one that came in last night, over here on the right. And I want to draw your attention into this corridor right here, because as of Sunday night, this was looking much drier. This was looking like the system here Friday and Saturday would track well off to the south and do so quietly with that precipitation once again near the Ohio River Valley. But with the last forecast, we're seeing the area of low pressure track a little bit stronger, a little bit further north, but seeing a more robust precipitation threat now with an inch or two of precipitation possible across portions of Iowa, northern Illinois, and Wisconsin. Now, we'll go ahead and add the GFS in here. So we're looking at the most recent runs of the European model and the GFS model here on the right. And you see the GFS is a little bit of a different story. It's not quite so wet here across Iowa, northern Illinois, and southern Missouri. But it, too, is maybe a little bit more robust with some of the rainfall here across the Dakotas into eastern portions of Nebraska, into portions of western Iowa. So some uncertainty with the late week storm system, with the European model wanting to be a little wetter in this corridor, the GFS wanting to be a little bit wetter in this corridor. But what I would just reiterate is with this pattern, I'm going to play a loop of the precipitable water anomaly. It's just not going to favor much in the way of significant precipitation here as we head through the next 7 to 10 days. And that's because we keep getting reinforcing shots of drier air, these plunging fronts down to the Gulf Coast. We then see moisture return, but it really has a hard time getting well north of the Ohio River Valley or north of the Red River. And that keeps the heavier precipitation kind of in the Ohio River Valley and south from there. So as we look at the reflection of the pattern here, and we'll just kind of take a look at a couple things here. Again, the ridge in the west, the trough in the east. We're looking at the probability now from the European ensemble model of an inch or more of precipitation through Sunday. So taking us through the end of the week into the weekend. And where you see the red shading, that's where we've got the higher 90 plus probability. And again, that's from the Ozarks into the Ohio River Valley. And as we look at that question mark corridor here across areas further north into the mid-Mississippi Valley, that's where we're talking about much lower probability. So while the operational runs are kind of struggling with that Friday, Saturday storm system, really the pattern and the ensembles here, when we take that model and we run it, numerous times, we're still seeing relatively low odds of getting that significant precipitation, again, across this corridor right here. That's why I've got some trust issues. It's a new idea with some of the heavier precipitation there. Not ready yet to fully buy in. And we look at the probability of a half of an inch of precipitation between now and Sunday night. So again, taking it through the end of the week into the rest of the weekend. Again, a half an inch or more from the Ohio River or the southern plains, the Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle, into maybe the southern third of Illinois, southern Indiana, southern Ohio. That's where you've got the higher, close to 100% probability. But again, some of the orange and the yellow shading here, that's when we're talking about maybe 50 to 60% odds, and you see that here across maybe getting into Iowa and up to northern Illinois, southern Indiana. Northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, northern Indiana. That's where we get the higher probability of a half of an inch. So again, the heavier precipitation is going to be south. Right here, we've got some question marks, but still likely drier than average, and not quite ready to buy into maybe some of the ideas of the heavier precipitation Friday and Saturday. But that at least means we do have several days here to keep the machinery in the field across portions of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. It's that late week storm system that has the bigger question marks. And then, of course, across the Canadian Prairie into the northern plains, looking at much higher odds of avoiding even getting that half of an inch of precipitation. So let's finish then. We'll look at the temperatures. And again, a push of cooler air making its way into the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt today. High temperature is going to be on the cooler side, but warm air returning across the high plains, highs in the 70s across the Dakotas this afternoon. We'll look at high temperatures on Wednesday, again seeing things moderate across central Illinois, where we'll be in the 50s today, back to near 70 tomorrow. That cooler bias continuing across the east. Thursday afternoon, high temperatures. And then here is Friday. And again, we're seeing these pushes of cool air, but is this really, that awful? We're seeing a lot of blue shading. If we took the numbers off, it would look maybe a little bit daunting, but a slight cool bias in late April. Again, going to be high temperatures near 60 degrees for many. A bit of another shot of cool air on Saturday. We'll be back in the 50s again with some of the cloud cover and rain. That's going to make it hard to warm up across portions of Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. We'll take a look at those overnight lows. Again, freeze warnings, frost advisory is in place across eastern portions of the Corn Belt for those overnight lows tonight into Wednesday morning. Here's your Thursday morning temperatures, and then a look at those Friday morning lows as well. As always, we'll have another look at the Corn Belt as we get into Friday morning. Tomorrow, we'll have our long-range U.S.-focused weather analysis, and Thursday morning, you can catch our ag forecast video with Eric Snodgrass. I hope you have a wonderful day.